I've been asked which exercises are important in each block too. And that's the wrong question. It's not just about which exercises you pick, but how you load them that's critical. If you load them incorrectly for a particular block, then you don't get the training effect that you're after. So let's have a look now on the whiteboard and I'll explain in more detail.
So if we look at these exercises in terms of a force velocity continuum, we'll begin by looking at velocity here. So at one end we have low velocity and at the other end we have high velocity. And if I add force to this continuum as well, at one end we have high force and at the other end we have low force. And of course one affects the other. It's a continuum there. It makes sense that heavy things, you can only move those slowly, and light things you can move quickly. And in terms of the exercises, the heavy lifts for strength, that's those powerlifting exercises. And that's deadlifts, squats, bench press, chin-ups, as I explained on the other video. And at the fast end, we've got things like reaction drills. We've got sprints, of course. And being sport specific, we've also got things like single techniques, so single punches and kicks. All of those done at maximum velocity, high speed without fatigue. That's all speed training. A little bit further on the continuum, we've got things like plyometrics. We've got our med ball work. We've got resisted sprints. And then spanning the spectrum completely, we've also got our Olympic lifts. And even the Olympic lifts, the different lifts have a different place on the spectrum too. So at the higher force end, we've got the jerk. Then we've got the clean, kind of spanning the middle bit a bit more. And at the faster end, we have the snatch. But there are other exercises I use in my programs to span that gap too. So if you're not technically proficient enough to do the Olympic lifts, we've also got things like jump squats. And I'll explain how we can use that. They also span that spectrum quite nicely, as long as you get the load right. So let's just talk about that now. If we talk about our program, so we've got our blocks of training. So if we start with our strength block, then we have our power block, and then finally our speed block. We need to choose our load for these exercises to suit the purpose of each of these blocks. So for strength, we want to select loads that develop peak force, and that's in newtons. For the power, we want to develop peak power. So you want to select the loads that give you peak power, and that's in watts. And then for speed, we want to select the loads that give us peak velocity. And that will be in meters per second. So whatever exercises you use, you want to select loads for those exercises that address those qualities. That will match the purpose of the block. And that is different for each exercise. You can't, for example, say a load that will develop peak power for a clean will be the same that would work with a jump squat. Each exercise has its own force, power and velocity profile there with the corresponding load that you need to pick. So if we take the jump squat example that I have in phase 1 of my online program, although that jump squat's being used throughout the whole cycle, I choose a load to develop power for that's appropriate to the block that we're training in. So I'm looking for peak force from the jump squat in the strength block, and that would be at about 40 to 50% of your back squat 1 rep max. And then moving into the power block, you can get peak power from the jump squat at about 30 to 40% of your back squat 1 rep max. And then for the speed block, I'm looking for peak velocity, and that's anything from 0% to 10% of your back squat 1 rep max. So 0% would obviously be body weight only. So using the same exercise but loading it differently perfectly matches the purpose of each block in the power training element. So for each block of training here, you need to firstly select the right exercises. You then need to test your 1 rep max for those exercises so you can get the right proportion of load for the given block. You then need to select the training load that is appropriate to that block. So whether you're looking for maximum force from that exercise, maximum power, or maximum velocity from that exercise. So that's either peak newtons, watts, or meters per second. And then finally, you need to calculate your low, medium, high, and deload loads across the week as well. So that's back to where we were there on the previous whiteboard coaching session there. So I hope that helps you understand that it's not just the exercises that you pick for each block of training that's important, but how you load those exercises. You can pick the right exercise but load it completely inappropriately, and it won't be matching what you're trying to do in that particular block, and you'll be wasting that benefit. And if you'd like to take a closer look at my online program where all of this is done for you, then feel free to take a look. The link will be below the video, along with a link to get a copy of this whiteboard scribblings if you can read my writing. If you'd like that for reference, you can get that too.